All right. Well, I'm in rainy Bowling Green, Kentucky today. It's just pouring down rain. One of the things that a lot of people are asking me about is how do I collect family stories and I share them. And there are beginning to get to be a lot of applications available to do that. So that's what the inspiration of today's lecture is. You can copy down my email. I certainly will answer any questions if you have them via email if you need to. Since I submitted the lecture, I have kind of changed the orientation just a little bit because FamilySearch.org has put a whole bunch of new features up there. And so the lecture I gave 2 conferences ago is going to be dated. I need to go out to YouTube and put a little comment about that. And you can now submit family trees, the general public can, and save photos and stories, along with getting pedigree charts and fan charts. So I'm going to go over part of that today. And that just changed the whole world out there for us, and there's a lot of other options now. So I'm going to be talking a little bit first about family story tips, because it's hard sometimes to get people to give their family stories. We're going to talk about FamilySearch.org. I'm also going to talk about LegacyStories.com, and then just a little bit about the iPad apps. If there's interest, I'm going to come back and do another lecture just on iPad apps. And then I'll mention some of the other websites. There's another one called 1,000 Memories and a few other ones out there. But there's just so many new ones. It's just like every time I turn around, there's somebody else announcing a new one where you can record your family stories and your pictures and your photo and your audio and your video. And so this is a growing area of family history and genealogy. So how do you get started doing this? First, don't let it freak you out about getting writer's block, because I know I tried to get my mother to write some of her family stories down, and I could not get her to write. And this is a woman who used to be involved in journalism when she was in high school. So instead, I've asked her questions several times along the way and tell me about a specific topic in the family. And then gather these stories, and they can be just as small as a few sentences, but they can be as large as several pages in a book or an entire book. Now, some people get really ambitious and make a whole book out of it. But plan for just small topics, and then you can always write little transitions in between the small topics. Some of the ideas are, for instance, have somebody tell about all the occupations, every job they ever had, all the houses that they lived in. I had a really good interview with my dad one time, just having him tell me all the different houses he's lived in and why they moved, all the different schools that you've attended. I wish I had done that earlier, because when in my first and second grade year, I went to 10 different schools. My dad traveled a lot, and so I don't even know all the schools I went to then. So even those of us who are current in our family history won't remember everything either. So gather up this information as you can get it. You want to record the interview if possible. Now, I know some people just get paranoid about recording, but if you're listening and trying to jot down paper notes, you're going to leave out something that's important later on. And you also lose the flavor of how they're telling the story. So you want to do an audio or a video recording. Now, a lot of cameras now have a mode where you can just sit it up on a stand over in the corner and hit start, and you can record a video. And that will, you can just capture it. You don't even have to have a special video camera to do that. If you plan on using it in a book where you publish, or not just a book, but if you put it out on YouTube or you publish that audio and the person is still living, you really do need to have a release of some kind. Most of the time when you go back to them and show them what you have, they'll sign the release if you need to do that. But don't get bogged down in getting the paperwork for a release before you get started. Just sometimes I'm even really sneaky, and I just start a recording while it's sitting on the table and people don't realize I'm recording the interview. Some of the other ideas that you can have are to trigger a discussion, or how did you meet my dad? How did you meet your first girlfriend? What was your wedding day like? Or tell me the story of, and then give something special that is really vivid in their memory. My mother had one where she and her cousin poked holes in the radiator. And so something like that would stick in her mind, and I could go back to her and say, tell me back that story again. I remember you telling it, but tell me it again. Or tell me about how you fell off the porch and broke your arm. Or how you turned the cat pink. That's one of my favorite ones. So get something that you know they've mentioned before that's funny, or something that's related to a major life event or a world event. Tell me where you were when September 11th happened in 2001. Tell me what happened when John F. Kennedy was assassinated. People will remember world events. And then finally, if somebody's being evasive, or if you ask questions, similar questions, and you get different answers at different times, there may be more to the story. My husband's father was very elusive. We know he was born in Scotland, and he ended up in Canada. And we kept asking him, where did your dad die? Well, I don't know. Where is he buried? I don't know. Well, how did you get to Canada? Well, my dad brought me. The next time we'd bring something up, and we said, well, just how did you end up in that part of Canada? Well, my dad brought me, but he went back to Scotland. So it was extremely elusive. Finally, we got sneaky, and we started asking questions. The next time we were there, we said, where were you when World War I broke out? Well, I was working in as a bartender in a country club. And then, so the next time we asked him, where were you when the Titanic sank? And he said, well, I was in Scotland, and I was sitting in my grandmother's parlor playing the pump organ. So we had a bracket then, 1914 to 1917, that he came into Canada. And so we were a little bit more, we had a little bit more of a bracket about what happened. Eventually, we were able to find some records after he died, and he was a British home child. And it was kind of a stigma to be associated as a British home child. So that's why he was being elusive. I don't think he intentionally did it. He just, over the years, he had hidden it, because a lot of the, it was kind of like being an immigrant now. In Canada, if you were one of those British home children, everything got blamed on you. So if there was a theft in the neighborhood, it was one of those British home children. So he learned to be quiet about it. So ask bracketing questions on different trips to try to get something narrowed down if they're being elusive about how answering some question. Be sure and keep the context of when you recorded this. So afterwards, after you get home, or when you take it and put it on your computer, be sure and record who, what, when, why, and where you conducted the interview. I have a couple of interviews that I forgot to write down the date. So now I only have kind of a general idea of when it was I conducted that interview. So as much as I do family history, sometimes I screw things up too. So try to remember to do that right after you do your recording of some kind. Then transcribe your interview, because later you'll want that way that somebody answered the question. And the way you transcribe it, you just put the person's name and then what they ask. So like when I asked Mom, I said, where did you go to when you first started going to the USO for a dance? And she came back, she said, well, I'd gotten sick and I'd come home from nursing school in Fort Worth, and I volunteered at the USO in Tyler, Texas. So she was telling me a little bit more, and then you can ask questions like, well, how did you get sick? How long were you sick? How come when did you start nursing school? How long did you stay in? So you have other things. By asking one question, you can end up with a lot of information. If some other tips here. If it's going to be a formal interview, sometimes it's just better to keep on capturing the conversation. At one point, after I did a kind of a semi-formal interview with my grandmother, we just got to chatting about various things like the governor's election, and at the time it was Ann Richards, and my grandmother made the comment she thought she would never have seen a woman ever be elected a governor of Texas again. And just some of the conversation that followed the interview was as important as the actual formal interview. So take time to learn how to record on your iPhone, your iPad, or a small voice recorder. And I'll mention that again here in a minute. And if you do use a voice recorder, be sure and check your batteries so they don't run down in the middle of the interview. And then if you're interviewing somebody that's older, be sure and take breaks. Don't go more than an hour without stopping and stretching and giving them a chance to get something to drink or go do something else for a while and come back later. I like to do these interviews when I get together with family, because then you've got a lot of people around and maybe one person will start the story and other people will chime in with other versions or more information that the other person had forgotten. The other way to start, kind of break the ice, is to bring out a photo and have the person tell you about when that photo was taken, what they were doing, why it was taken, why it was so important to them. I've also seen a successful way of handling photos by putting photos out on a table at a family reunion and then just leaving the tape recorder running. So as people walked up to the table, they started telling, oh, look, there's Aunt Susie, and she was doing such and such. And so then they began to say something because they're actually just making notes about the photograph. And they didn't really realize that I was recording it later for something to put in my genealogy notes. So now that you've done some recordings, we're going to talk about how do you collect them, what you do with them afterwards. And that's what the primary focus of our topic today is. On iPad alone, on an iPad or iPhone, I put that up there as iPad, but it's also the iPhone. And a lot of the applications you buy for the iPhone also run on the iPad, so you don't have to pay for them a second time. I did a search on audio recorder, and I got 283 results. So there are that many different applications to do recording, and they're pretty self-teaching because they just have a stop and a start button and a rewind button, and then you should be able to transfer them back using iTunes to your computer, and then be able to store them and put them somewhere. So my favorite way of doing it, however, is Evernote app, which is from Evernote.com. And the reason I go to Evernote to do these is I can create one note, and it has little buttons on there, one for the audio or one for the photo, and I can upload an image or I can upload PDF files, and I can attach them all three to the same note. So I can do any or all of those combinations. So I can write notes about what the interview was and then attach the photo recording also to that note. When you create the new note, it also, if you have an entry in your calendar, like if you're at a conference, it will attach that to the note, and if you don't want it in there, you just delete it off of the little tags in the note, or you have a geographic tag, and it'll put the address of what town you're near. And that helps to document your interview. So if you were sitting in somebody's house, you'll have the address out there. That's if you have your geographic location turned on. On your iPad, you can turn that off. When you bring up Evernote and add a new note and you do record, you can record up to 25 megabytes in length for a free account. If you have a premium account, which is like $45 a year, you can make them up to 100 megabytes. I have recorded almost an hour-long meeting, I know, on Evernote, but I also have a premium account, so it doesn't take up much space. Also, as a premium user, and only one person in the family has to be a premium user, so you can all get together and chip together and say, okay, I'll buy that $45. You can create a directory and share it with only your other family members, so you don't have to make it public, or you can make that directory completely public and post a link to that directory. My son and I and my husband, we use directories on Evernote to share documents sometimes where we don't want it to go through mail. It's kind of a more private way of doing this in this directory. If you have a premium account, the PDF files are automatically indexed as well as image files. So if I take a photo of text, a postcard or an article out of a magazine, and I take a photo of it and upload it to Evernote and put it in a note, the minute it gets up onto Evernote, which is usually within a minute or two, it has indexed it. So the text of that article can be searched. So once you get your audio recording up there and you have your notes, you can immediately search on anything that is in that photo. So that's kind of handy. You don't have to transcribe some of the things. Now, it's not smart enough to do old handwriting. How those of us that do old documents wish that somebody would have an automated way of reading those old handwriting, but it has to be typewritten of some kind. I'm going to mention legacy stories here, but I also have more of it toward in the second half of the lecture. Legacystories.org, and the URL down at the bottom. I'm an affiliate, so that URL at the bottom is I would be able to see when you joined as somebody that was affiliate to me. You can upload a photo and make a recording of a family talking about the photo. They call them talking photos. You can link to photos and you can take your photos and stories that you create on FamilySearch.org and link them to any family that you already have on FamilySearch.org. And so we'll see how to put it on FamilySearch.org, and we'll see how to link it from Legacy Stories. What that's going to do is that'll help preserve those family stories and those photos for a long time. Legacy Stories, one of the things I like about it, I get story prompt every month. So it kind of kicks me into remembering I need to go out there and record some more stories. You can also create slideshows and make them multimedia by adding music, or you can record videos. And the accounts are inheritable, so you can actually will these accounts to somebody else in the family. They're not going to go away. And so if you bought a lifetime subscription, it's still somebody can then inherit it. There is a free version of the account, is one shoebox, so I urge you to go try it. And then if you want to upgrade to the premium, it's either $5 a month, or there's even longer plans than that at a discount. If you're in APCUG and you send me a note and you do join as an affiliate, I will donate the money to APCUG. Although all you need to do is just leave that last section off after the .org/ and then nobody will get credit for it, and just it'll go into the company. The founders of Legacy Stories are passionate about people recording their family stories, so they've made it very inexpensive to be able to have a permanent place to do this. Legacy Stories had an iPad app up there, and I went last night to when I was doing this lecture earlier this week, and it's down right now. They've had a bug, and it's in the process of being reviewed by Apple. And so keep looking for it in the App Store, and it'll be a way of you sit there and hold your iPhone, start the recording, and it'll be able to go onto the Legacy Stories website. I might be able to demo that some other time. Now, FamilySearch.org is the free website from the LDS Church. It is primarily to promote family research and genealogy. There are tons of records out there. You now can create an account. Used to, you have to be an LDS Church member in order to have an account there, or a volunteer. I was indexing and I had an account. Now the general public can make an account, and you can save your family tree out there, and you can make that tree public or keep it private. You can upload from GEDCOM, which is the exchange format from other computer programs. There is a current limitation in that it doesn't take any notes you've added or sources or any multimedia links uploaded. I think later you'll see that they'll add sources and maybe allow you to upload audio and video. They're working on it. But if you want to upload a tree, be sure and use that path there, FamilySearch.org/upload/trees. I had heck trying to find that link last night off of the main site. I finally ended up having to do a Google on it. I think it's still relatively new. They just started being able to do this for non-LDS members in the last couple of months, so I don't think they promoted it real well, or not, heavily pushing it yet, till they get their everything kind of worked out in the kinks. If you do a Google on family tree quick start guide for FamilySearch.org, you'll find several manuals that they use to train the LDS family members when they started doing this. And there are a lot of PDF files on how to do it and what to do about it. So there's plenty of stuff on Google and training for this. Now I'm just going to mention this one. thousandmemories.org is one of Photo Album's site. It was bought by Ancestry.com last year. Now Ancestry.com is a paid site. It has an Android and iPhone app in order to be able to upload those photos. And you can attach them to your family tree, but you have to have a paid account on Ancestry. You can't have one of the free accounts. I've seen some problems posted from other people, and that is if your family tree has a lot of people in it. So I have like 4,000 people in my family tree. On your iPad, you can only see so many of them. It only downloads like a couple of hundred or something, so you can't scroll through the list in order to attach a photo. And so you'll have to access it through the Ancestry.com website in order to attach a photo yet. But I think you'll see this one will grow also as it goes along. So now I'm going to talk a little bit more about FamilySearch.org. When you log into your account, you'll see up in the right-hand corner, you'll be able to see, let me get my pointer here, you'll be able to see that there's a place to create an account, or there's also a place that log in and you can sign in. And then you can do anything like search through the records, you can add photos, you can go over to the groups and collaborate and post questions, or you can also post your family tree. And here I put the path on this also again so that in case you didn't get it written down before, it's FamilySearch.org/upload/trees. It will keep track of the last people. Now this got cut off a little bit when I made the slide, but it keeps track of the last people that I was looking at when I was in on the website. I also can print fancy fan charts and pedigree charts besides adding the photos. And so it's pretty full-featured website now. Not only are you searching records there, which we used to be able to do. My last lecture was mostly, I think maybe 2 conferences ago, was on searching on Family Search and how to use it. When you enter and upload the tree in GEDCOM format, and I reiterated here, no notes, sources, or multimedia links, so that's kind of a drawback, but once you get on the Family Search site, you can attach their records. So they will point off to the 1910 census or the, whatever the records are there. You can attach it to your family tree, but it has to be in something from their website. You can compare to other submitted trees. When you upload, I suggest that you upload only a portion of your tree, like maybe 10 to 20 names, because immediately it's going to do a comparison to trees that are already out there, and it'll start asking you questions like, does it match this person, does it match that person? And depending on how much information somebody's got out there, you might be able to tell whether or not it's the same person or not. Some of the older trees don't have much documentation, so I just kept saying no, 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 until I knew for sure somebody was the same person. So, and watch out for people of the same name. For some reason or another, when my GEDCOM got uploaded, it took the junior and senior off of my dad's and my grandfather's name. So I'm going to show you here in a minute, and I actually got photographs attached to the wrong one of them, so I'll have to go out there and delete them and reattach them to the correct one. So definitely submit only a few names at a time. This is what a person view looks like. Had I had some events, it would be listed along here. The reason I put this up here, first, if you do not have the person marked as being dead, it's going to assume you're living, and it's going to hide all the information that you have uploaded. And so therefore all my information about my birth and school and anything else I have in my GEDCOM file is not shown. And the this number here, this L8 whatever HR, this number is something that is significant. That is a unique number assigned to every person in family search trees. So if you find somebody's name that you want to attach a photo to, you might write that number down, and I'll show you here in a minute. Excuse me, my voice is kind of cracky today. And here's what a pedigree chart looks like. This is my grandfather's deal, and this is my father. And so it shows you both directions, both his ancestors and both the descendants. So it's kind of nice to see the pedigree chart. Here's what a fan chart looks like. And so if you had all the other part of the tree here, it actually would look pretty neat. And so this is a nice way of displaying your family history. And then by going to this Albert Clifton Steele person, I could click on add a photo, and when I did, I got this page here. It says drag and drop and click your photo. So it's real easy. You just grab your photo from someplace on your system and plop it right down right there, and it starts uploading the photo. So I uploaded this one. My dad was in World War II and was in England, and this was a photo that the government had released of the crew and the S for sugar airplane. And so I uploaded it, and I went ahead and put all the information that I had. It was not on the photo originally. It came out of a newspaper clipping that I had that was identical to this photo that was published, and my grandmother had kept it. And then you want to put a description in there of exactly what the photo is and where it was. So this preserved part of that family's photo, and it also said who contributed. And you can compile these photos into albums, so you can put a lot of that information on the family search site. Now once I got it posted, I could share this link to the photo out on Facebook. And I don't know about the rest of you, but the reason I got on Facebook was all of my cousins' kids and my son and my daughter-in-law, they're all very active on Facebook. I get to find out a lot of things. The last birth announcement of a cousin's kid was on Facebook. I didn't get a formal birth announcement in the mail. I didn't get a phone call. It showed up on Facebook. So I'm able to keep track of this, the younger generation a lot more by being on Facebook. Now, one of the things that when you post this to Facebook, you would presume that it's public at that point, or as public as your Facebook account allows, because you can say, oh, I only want people to see posts of mine that are family or friends of mine. But they are pretty hyper about their security, and so you have to have made this photo available to the public, because even though I put a link out there, my husband went to check on it to see it, and he couldn't get to it. So they're pretty controlling about their security, and you'll have a place to undo that, to change the permissions on that. Besides, when I'm sitting here on my dad's record, and this is the error I made. This is actually my grandfather's record, and I attached the photo to my grandfather's record, so now I got to go out there and fix all of this. There's also a place to add a story, and you can write up a story and upload that information. So here I wrote the story of my dad and how he ended up in the military. He was in college in Durant, Oklahoma. There were a group of students who were taking flying lessons. He'd already logged over half the hours required to become a pilot, but the day after Pearl Harbor, the entire class went down and volunteered for the Army Air Corps. But he missed one too many questions on colorblind tests, so he wasn't able to be a pilot or a navigator. So instead he became an airplane mechanic, and he went to school up in for the Army in Boise, Idaho, and eventually ended up in Molesworth, England on this 303rd Bomb Group air crew. So even if it's just a few sentences here, we have put a small story up there that will be preserved. So I'm about ready to switch to the second half. Are there any questions while I'm doing that? Okay. So I'm going to spend a little bit more time talking about legacy stories, because that one I've gotten so excited about that website for preserving family history. It's a secure platform, so it's not as public as being on Facebook. You can archive all these personal testimonials. You can get together as a church and take out an account and preserve the history of your church. You can post church family photos. You can record lessons. I mean, all of these things you can kind of do as a social group. It's kind of a combination of Facebook for the social side and what Family Search has started for being able to put stories and photos up. But they've taken it one step further. They allow audio, video clips. So you can actually post video tape up there. And then you can create your own little private group, so that I can only share these with my family if I want to. And there's a lot of things where you've got kids' pictures, you might not want to share them with the public. So here is the Legacy Story website, and across the top you've got obviously your account settings. Get my little arrow back again. And under stories, you can add a story, edit some stories. You can always go back and edit these stories and add more, take away, correct spellings, anything else that you'd like to do. You can combine them all into a journal. You can save them as drafts. So if you're writing and you want to stop and you want to come back, you can save it as a draft. And I didn't see a way of doing that on Family Search. The story prompts, it has them out there listed so that you can kind of go back through them and say, oh, I missed a few prompts, so I think I'll go back and see what stories they were asking me to post. And a story prompt will be something like, here's, tell me about the teachers that influenced you negatively or positively. So that those little prompts help you to remember to post something and record those stories. You can upload photos, you can view and edit photos, you can create a slideshow, which I'll show, which is several photos in a row. You can add audio to it, and it just sit there and flip through all of those stories. It's kind of neat. So this is kind of the story of one of the prompts that they gave me is, what did I want to do when I grew up? And so I told a story about how I took my first computer class and I fell in love with computers, and that's how I ended up being a computer programmer. And then I've got a story posted up there about my great-grandparents, Joe Land, Kate Perdue, and he had married Florence, and after she had a child, she died, and so they had like 4 or 5 kids, and then he married the sister, and Granny Kate, he had another 4 or 5 kids by her. So I put the story up there because it was a neat story about their love life, and so I elaborated a little bit more about how for 10 years Florence had been married to him, so Kate had been around her brother-in-law quite a bit, and after Florence died, there was a baby who was only 3 months old, and then the other child that was only a couple of years older than that, and so Kate took them, and then Joe went to get him back a couple of months later after he thinks it kind of settled down from his wife dying. And the kids cried and cried and cried, and so he had to take them back to Kate's. And so over the next year, they exchanged the kids several times because they wanted to go stay with their Aunt Kate. And finally, she inherited a farm from her parents, and he had all these kids, and so he went to her and proposed and said that he respected her a lot, and she had land that needed to be cared for, and he had 5 kids, let's get married kind of thing. So I wanted to record that story, and I put a picture of them up there and did that. So once I do that story, I can then link it to a person that I have posted on Family Search. Now, this website also has a way of putting your family tree up there, but I like the one over on Family Search a little bit better, and I also wanted to limit how much time we presented today, so I didn't try to show that one since I had shown what the family tree looked like over on Family Search. But I can go over to it will link to Family Search databases. They're an authorized application that gets to be able to go in under the covers and search the Family Search database. And you can find the person by birth, marriage, or death events, by a spouse, by the parent's name. So you can limit to who you're searching for and find a person. And it brings up a list like this, and then you find the right person if you can, and if you can't, well, back out till you go figure out what their family search number is. Now right here they're just showing it by name and birth date and place and death date. If you can't find it by that person, you can back out and it will ask you to enter this number. And so I entered the number directly, and I got the correct number with this one. And so this is the ancestral file number that they assigned. And then I was able to link that photo to my dad. And so that puts a link back over to Family Search. And if I make that photo available to the rest of the world, then somebody from Family Search can also see that photo. Be sure and put a description. It'll ask for a description, and I put photos from World War II. And then if it's successful, it will come back up with this pop-up saying you've got it. I successfully linked it to FamilySearch.org. It doesn't take very long at all. I mean, it was like seconds till it had it linked, so that interface is pretty fast. I'm going to show about slideshows because this will be great for family reunions. So you can make a slideshow on Legacy Stories. Now, slideshows are available for free accounts. You just can't create more than one album for your family, your albums, and you can't create more than one journal. So there's a limit to, the amount of size of the number of photos you can upload and that sort of stuff. But there's enough for you to get started and at least do something for like one family reunion on a free account. So I picked several photos to upload, and then I uploaded them, and you can just pick 6 or 7 photos and upload them at the same time, and maybe they didn't come in the right order. Don't worry about it, because I can then, all I had to do was click on this photo and pick it up and move it around, so I could turn around and move it to somewhere else in the album. It was a very nice interface. I was really pleased when they added this feature. Then you'll add some comments, and this scrapbook was a scrapbook that my mom had done right after they first got married, and it's on black construction paper, and she had done lettering in white ink, and she had done these artworks, and but it is crumbling. I mean, it is coming to pieces. Obviously, it is 50 years old or so now, and so I wanted to preserve it for my family and my son and my cousins' families and my half-brothers' families, and so I wanted to make sure it gets preserved. So I scanned everything and put it in here so that I can make an album. And I just got started good. Now, once again, I posted a link to this album, but I forgot and didn't make the photos or the album. And each one of these photos, by the way, can be either say it is private, or it is only for family, or it is there for the general public. And I forgot to go into this little icon right here and pick that it was available for the public. And so when my husband went out to look at it, it wasn't there. And that way, if you've got a few photos out of an album that you want to just keep private, you can make that one private. So even if I posted the link to Family Search, to Facebook, then you can still control who sees each one of the photos, even though you may post a link to the entire photo album. There's a lot more to this. You can narrate the photos. You can bring up a photo and you click on one button and you just talk. So if your computer has a microphone on it, just turn the microphone on and sit there and narrate the photos or add music to the photos. Take your video. You can upload those. Several churches, as I had mentioned, are starting to use Legacy Stories to record their church family and what was going on, and some of the picnics and photos from previous picnics and families, and to try to record some of the things that go on in the church and or other organizations. And so this is a way of having a social group to collect all those photos, all those stories, the audio recordings, songs. If you had a singing that you wanted to record, then all of that can go together in these accounts on Legacy Stories. And I'm getting to the end here. I want to reiterate, we all have stories to tell, even if it's just a few sentences. Dig out photos, get the stories from your relatives, or sit there and talk about your photos. Upload them to a site, talk about them, record them on your iPhone or with a video recorder, and then write out several sentences or a paragraph about the photo if you can. But you do want to, at the minimum, record the date that you put the recording up there and what the recording was. If you were recording an interview, you want to record who you were interviewing, and if it was a special event like a family reunion, you want to be able to say something about that. And so the best thing I can tell you is just get out there and do it. Keep your stories a few paragraphs, a few sentences, one story at a time, one photograph at a time. And before you know it, you'll have a lot of your family stories recorded and kept. I think you're going to see more and more iPad apps to attach stories, not only to FamilySearch.org and LegacyStories.app, but some of the other websites will also. This is kind of a hot topic since a lot of people are into social media, and so you're going to see more and more of this happening. Are there any questions? Meeting notes for Cade Peterson for the iPad. Yes, there are some more, and there's like Audiology and several other ones where you can take meeting notes or record a meeting and take notes.
Jerry, I'm sorry, I did that. I clicked on the wrong thing. I was trying to get my microphone to open. Go ahead.
That's all right. There didn't seem to be any.
Yeah, I put that meeting notes up. It's a program, and I've got it recording right now, but let me stop it because I wanted to see if you could attach pictures to it too. It allows you to record, but while you're recording, it also has a notebook function. You could be sitting there typing, and as you type and they're talking, it's putting the notes and timing it. It puts the time at which you talked, and I can see that you can also add photographs to the meeting notes as well. So it's very robust. There's a free version, but the one you want to have is the $1.99 one, which will allow you to do more with the recordings.
Yeah, isn't it amazing all those the apps that people are putting together? I do like that one, and there's I think it was called Audiology was another one where you can take notes. I don't remember now, but it was where you could take notes, and it primarily was supposed to be for school kids taking notes in lectures, for college kids doing that kind of stuff. But obviously, if you can put photographs and take record music and take notes with typing notes into it. That's an excellent way of doing family history recording. So the ones I've shared with you were just a few of the ones I particularly use and knew that worked well. And I think you're going to see more and more features added to all of them, and you're going to see a lot more applications available. It's going to make family reunions just excellent, because you do these collections and these albums and take them up there and show them at family reunion, and people love those things. It's just great.
And you did mention Evernote earlier, and I'm a big proponent of Evernote. In fact, I do a presentation on it. One of the neat things that Evernote will do is if you put a photograph and when you post it, if there's words on the picture, it actually, when you start doing searches, it OCRs those pictures to get any words, like some writing on an airplane or some other writing. It makes it nice for if you're doing some searches to find, well, yeah, I know, I saw that in a picture, and you can type it in, and bingo, there it is.
Yeah, I mentioned that earlier with other stuff. You know, if you drop in a PDF file also, it indexes all the words on it, and any photo you take. I just love Evernote. It's not only does it work well, it's just, it's like you can think of a million different ways to use Evernote. And family history, when I go to the library now and do research in family history, I take photos of the pages rather than photocopies. The only place you can't do that is somewhere like an archive. Here at Western Kentucky University has an archive, and the archive doesn't like for you to use photos. So I have to take the print of what I'm wanting and bring it home and scan it. But normally I use my iPhone or my iPad to take photos. So.
Yeah, the PDF version in Evernote, the indexing of the PDFs, I believe, is only in the if you've got a paid account.
Correct.
But
yeah, it's premium.
But with your iPhone, iPhones do an awful lot of OCR too when you take, and the iPad as well. You take photos of sheets. I've done that a lot for various particular items, and it will do a pretty good job of the OCR with it too.
Yeah, it does. That's it. If nobody else has any questions, and if anybody is interested in other family history topics, send me an email and I'll be happy to see. I have lectures on quite a few different topics. I've tried to keep it as techy as possible, though, because obviously it being the APCUG, that we want to orient it toward technology kind of things.